Have you ever wondered how liberal the New York Times is? I'd like to give you a couple of examples. It's rather shocking from time to time. I know that I use that in the Wall Street Journal a great deal to bring background to some of the news in these broadcasts, simply because that's the establishment. And so it's nice to know what they're thinking and how they're projecting it and passing it along to you. Here, for instance, in the New York Times this last week, right on the front page is the beginning of an article. It's this large, right on the front page, of the death of Barry Commoner. Now, Barry Commoner, the way they put it here, let me read you the opening paragraph. A founder of modern ecology and one of its most provocative thinkers and mobilizers in making environmentalism a people's political cause. And it's his obituary. It also says in 1970, the year of the first Earth Day, Time magazine put Mr. Commoner on its cover and called him the Paul Revere of ecology. Now, when I used to infiltrate Marxist organizations in my youth, it was very common to see Dr. Commoner's name as a sponsor of some communist-led organization, socialist-led organization. By the way, this is just the first page. They continue it on into the newspaper, and here is the rest of the obituary. I mean, this is a huge obituary for a gentleman who, let me put it to you this way, the way they put it. Having been grounded as an undergraduate in Marxist theory, he saw his main target as capitalist systems of production in industry, agriculture, energy, and transportation. So if you put that first paragraph together, that he became sort of the father of ecology, then this paragraph where he says that he became steeped in Marxist theology or theory, and that he had as his main target the capitalist systems of production in industry, agriculture, energy, and transportation. You see, that's what the ecology movement is. It targets all of these areas where you and I can come and go as we please, grow the food that we need, et cetera, et cetera. It is an attack on the capitalist system. But at any rate, they love him enough to give him virtually a whole page when you add it all up. Interestingly enough, too, is that they also, in the same newspaper on the next page, they have another obituary, and this one is this large. Now, so it must be a very important man. And it's Hobsbawm, a Marxist historian. And they say this: the leading light in a group of historians within the British Communist Party that included this individual. And so naturally we want to have a great big obituary on this individual. His master work remains his incisive and often eloquent survey of the period he referred to as the long 19th century. Was brilliant historian, that's what they say. A lifelong communist, would be remembered simply as one of the great historians of the 20th century, this communist. It says here that he stuck with the Communist Party after the Soviet Union crushed the Hungarian uprising in 1956 and the Czech reform movement in 1968. He eventually let his Communist Party membership lapse about the time the Berlin Wall fell and the Eastern Bloc disintegrated in 1989. So when communism was hardcore, this guy kept his membership up, but when it started to wane, when it started to so-called die, then he decided to quit. So this man was a die-hard communist. In case you may not understand that, let me read you the next to the last paragraph in this article. And see if you would want to put an obituary in your newspaper for this individual. In 1994, he shocked viewers when in an interview with Michael Inektiv, probably not pronouncing that right, on the BBC. He said that the deaths of millions of Soviet citizens under Stalin would have been worth it if a genuine communist society had been the result. Oh, hey, we just kill a few million people and we'll have real communism and that'd be okay. Well, they keep doing this over and over and over again, but they never have what people think is communism. They get what is communism through the mass murder of millions of people. And that's the whole idea, is to murder any opposition to the rule of the dictatorship of the proletariat, which is nothing more than using the majority and in their name having an authoritarian, totalitarian rule where everybody gets to be equal. I don't want to be equal. I want to be a little bit better than I can be, so to speak. I want to excel. I want to strive for a better job. I want to strive for a better standard of living. I want my kids to be better off than I was. I don't want everybody to be equal. That doesn't mean I have to step on anybody. It just means we all compete. And through the competition, it elevates society as a whole. Because if it wasn't competitive, we wouldn't even have the automobile. We wouldn't even have television. We wouldn't have the food that we eat today in abundance down at our local stores. Because of the competitive nature of trying to be a little bit better in ourselves, for our family, for our business, for our employer, whatever, elevates all of society in the process. Communism does the opposite. They slaughter millions. They destroy economies so they can rule. Very simple. You wonder how liberal the New York Times is? Full one-page obituaries for 2 communists who died. In case you're still wondering, here in the Sunday paper yesterday, in the Sunday Review, this is the headline and you'll be able to read it. Republicans to cities, drop dead. It's a political, supposedly it's a political ad, but really it's a political article. But it's written to be an article, but if you tell me if this is a political ad or not. Gee, I wonder, how subtle can you get, as they say? Republicans to cities, drop dead. Basically, it's the Republicans are ignoring the cities, et cetera, and anyway, you get the idea from the headline alone. Even if you don't read the article, you get a pretty good flavor for what they're trying to say. Just one other thing I'd like to point out to you. Here we had a situation, I don't know if you heard about it, we've carried it on the New American magazine, and the title in the New American Online article was, Pennsylvania's high school band commemorates Russian Revolution. And so these band members went on out there with a hammer and sickle and everything else and played in commemoration for the Russian Revolution in October of 1917. Isn't that wonderful? Well, what happened? The next part of the headline in the New American article says it, citizens outraged. So the parents and citizens were completely outraged that the school would allow the school band to commemorate the beginning of Russian communism and the slaughter of Soviet citizens. It tells you either one of 2 things or both. A, somebody in the school is teaching something they shouldn't, or 2, somebody in the school isn't teaching something. Because if they're that ignorant about what communism is, why would they celebrate it? Public high school. Then, just last Friday, we see this. School questions the cheer for God. It had a Bible passage on it that said, and let us run with endurance the race God has set before us. Now that was a banner to be used by the cheerleaders. Now, were the parents outraged? No, it was the school authorities that were outraged. Here we have a contrast. One school, the school authorities have no problem with the school band marching out to commemorate the revolution in Russia that led to millions of people being slaughtered. On the other hand, the school authorities were outraged in this district over the fact that the cheerleaders would want to proclaim God and that they should follow God. We'll see you next week.